because you essentially misled the country during the election and you've raised taxes in a way that no one was expecting or voted for.
I came into politics relatively late in life, having done other things. I came in with one purpose only, and that is to change lives for the better. We made key choices yesterday in relation to the future of our country.
But choices that weren't in your manifesto. There was no suggestion of £14 billion of tax rises in that manifesto, Prime Minister.
We inherited a very badly damaged economy. We audited the books and found £22 billion missing. We've had to do the response.
Starmer crushed. Supreme Court rules against Keir Starmer's secret EU scheme. Breaking news from the heart of Westminster has shaken British politics to its core. The Supreme Court has struck down a secret EU alignment plan masterminded by Labour leader Keir Starmer. In a unanimous judgment delivered by all 11 justices, the highest court in the land declared the covert strategy unlawful and unconstitutional, exposing what many are now calling a betrayal of the British public's democratic will. This unprecedented ruling, confirmed in a letter sent by the Prime Minister to all members of Parliament, scrutinised the lawfulness of Starmer's advice to Her Majesty's government. The court reminded that the judiciary has long exercised supervisory jurisdiction over government acts, ensuring the government's actions remain lawful and within constitutional boundaries. Behind the scenes, for months if not years, Starmer's administration had quietly been drafting a plan to realign the United Kingdom with European Union rules, piece by piece, regulation by regulation, without any public disclosure, parliamentary debate, or vote. The plan, hidden from both Parliament and the electorate, was masked in bureaucratic language like regulatory cooperation and technical harmonisation. These seemingly innocuous phrases concealed a deliberate attempt to bypass democratic procedures and return Britain to Brussels' orbit through backroom deals. The court did not mince words. It blasted the government's attempt to alter UK regulations through executive action alone, ruling that such moves without full parliamentary approval violated democratic principles and constitutional norms. In effect, Starmer had sought to use his position to forge international commitments that would dramatically affect British sovereignty, without properly consulting the elected representatives of the people. European officials on key sectors such as environmental compliance, food safety, digital markets, and data protection. Despite the significance of these shifts, no formal debate took place in the Commons. More damningly, the court found these acts to be unlawful, exposing a calculated breach of constitutional protocol. Starmer, who had once projected himself as the embodiment of respect for the Brexit referendum and democratic transparency, was caught red-handed. What had been framed publicly as pragmatic cooperation with Europe was in reality a secret agenda to tether Britain back to EU standards. The shockwave has since rippled across the country, sparking protests outside Parliament and in cities nationwide, with placards proclaiming, "Democracy betrayed, Starmer must go," and cries of, "We voted Leave, not lie." Labour MPs, especially those representing Leave-supporting constituencies, are reeling. Many felt blindsided by revelations that their leader had negotiated these regulatory alignments without their knowledge. Backbenchers who had campaigned on the promise of respecting the referendum result now find themselves publicly defending what they believed was a lie. This has triggered a political meltdown inside Labour, with demands for transparency and accountability rising rapidly. Inside Number 10, Downing Street officials have launched a full damage control campaign, attempting to frame the court's judgment as a technical legal disagreement. But the Supreme Court's language was unambiguous. The justices emphasized that executive power cannot be wielded to alter UK law via secret deals with foreign bodies, especially when bypassing Parliament. Legal experts have hailed this judgment as a landmark decision, underscoring the limits of prime ministerial power and reaffirming the principle of parliamentary sovereignty. This ruling serves as a stern warning: leaders cannot govern in the shadows or make secret treaties that reshape the country's laws. Public outrage has intensified. Leave voters who had given Starmer the benefit of the doubt are now disillusioned. Focus groups in red wall areas express feelings of betrayal, anger, and mistrust, convinced that Starmer never accepted the referendum result and intended all along to reverse Brexit through stealth. Within Labour, the pressure is reaching a breaking point. Senior MPs are demanding full disclosure. Junior staffers have begun leaking internal communications that reveal deliberate attempts to downplay the plan to the shadow cabinet. Constituency Labour parties are convening emergency meetings, demanding answers as anger boils over. One Northern MP, speaking off the record, described the situation as an unthinkable disaster. Another called for an urgent executive meeting to manage the fallout. Meanwhile, resignations have begun. A junior shadow minister for trade, a staunch Leave supporter, stepped down in protest, condemning the secretive approach as a betrayal of the democratic mandate. Her resignation letter struck a chord, circulating widely on social media and fueling calls for Starmer's resignation. Inside Labour HQ, panic has set in. Crisis advisors have been summoned, damage limitation strategies deployed, but the trust once built over years of Labour's Brexit assurances is rapidly disintegrating. The crisis has exposed the cracks in Labour's leadership. Starmer's carefully cultivated image as a principled, calm, and competent leader has been shattered. Instead, what remains is a fractured party plagued by infighting, mistrust, and doubt. Emails from angry MPs poured into party whips' inboxes within hours of the verdict. Constituency Labour parties demanded emergency sessions. Leaked internal memos revealed deliberate attempts to mislead the party's own members about the true scope of the EU regulatory plans, instructing them to label the proposals as mere economic cooperation despite evidence to the contrary. Some MPs accused Starmer of using them as shields, allowing them to defend falsehoods while pursuing a secret agenda. A senior Midlands MP told reporters anonymously, "He used us as shields. He knew exactly what he was doing and let us go out there defending a lie. This isn't leadership, it's sabotage from within." The dominoes quickly began to fall. Calls for an internal investigation mounted. Multiple MPs demanded that Starmer face the Parliamentary Labour Party and answer directly. Then came the resignations, each amplifying the sense of crisis. One shadow minister publicly declared, "Our democracy means nothing if leaders think they can bypass Parliament and secretly bind our country to foreign institutions. I cannot defend that." The resignations triggered a wave of renewed calls within the party for a leadership challenge. Factions have hardened. Moderate MPs see this as an opportunity to replace Starmer with a less divisive figure, while the party's traditional left aims to use the scandal to reignite opposition to his centrist leadership. The unity Labour once boasted since Starmer took charge has crumbled. Despite efforts to manage the narrative, media scrutiny has intensified. Even left-leaning newspapers have criticised Starmer's handling of the scandal, highlighting the stark contradiction between his public persona as a former director of public prosecutions, an upholder of the rule of law, and his covert breach of democratic norms. Conservative MPs have pounced. Tory ministers characterised the court ruling as proof that Labour cannot be trusted to uphold Brexit. They accuse Starmer of plotting stealthy re-entry into the EU and demand full disclosure of all communications related to the regulatory alignment plan. The Prime Minister herself condemned Starmer in Parliament, stating, "What we have seen is not merely a legal failure but a moral failure. Sir Keir Starmer has been caught red-handed trying to deceive the British people. If he had any honour, he would resign." The Tory benches erupted in cheers, while Labour's front bench was met with uneasy silence. Labour HQ, now in lockdown mode, banned journalists and cut off interviews. But the damage was irreversible. The revelation of a secret EU plot orchestrated at the highest levels of Labour leadership, with full knowledge of Starmer, has sent shockwaves through British politics. Internal documents submitted as evidence paint a disturbing picture of months, possibly years, of clandestine planning, in which Starmer's team coordinated closely with Brussels officials. Emails, meeting notes, and briefing papers show comprehensive efforts to draft agreements that would bring the UK's laws into closer alignment with EU standards on environmental policy, digital markets, product safety, data protection, and judicial cooperation. This was not a series of minor adjustments but a wholesale blueprint to re-embed Britain within the Brussels system through administrative and legal means, sidestepping democratic scrutiny and referendum mandates. The plan's architects sought to secure regulatory alignment agreements that would bind not just the current government but future British administrations to EU laws enforced through arbitration panels and joint committees lacking direct accountability to the UK Parliament. One document described the objective as creating irreversible convergence between British and European law, another bluntly stated the aim to neutralise Brexit disruption over the long term. Starmer was not merely negotiating, he was effectively surrendering British sovereignty quietly, stealthily, and illegally. The Supreme Court's ruling underscored that as opposition leader, Starmer had no executive authority to conduct such international negotiations. By secretly bypassing Parliament and the public, he violated constitutional boundaries and subverted parliamentary sovereignty. The court declared the entire scheme a calculated assault on democratic accountability. Had it succeeded, it would have fundamentally altered the UK's legal autonomy under false pretences. For many Leave voters, who had reluctantly supported Labour under Starmer's promise to make Brexit work, this was a devastating betrayal. This was not an effort to fix Brexit but to dismantle it piece by piece without public consent. Starmer's carefully constructed persona as the grown-up alternative to Tory chaos has been irrevocably damaged. What emerged instead was a leader who weaponized trust and the rule of law to push a hidden agenda, threatening one of the most significant democratic decisions in recent British history. Even commentators who had supported Remain struggled to defend Starmer. One columnist admitted, "I voted Remain, but this is indefensible." If Starmer believed in regulatory alignment, he should have made the case openly. Instead, he tried to sneak it in through courts and backroom deals. That is not leadership, it's cowardice. Another political analyst pointed out that Starmer's refusal to campaign for a second referendum after 2019 was not a change of principle but a strategic decision. He knew the country would reject rejoining and instead chose to disguise his ambitions, imposing them covertly. This scandal also shatters the central myth of Starmer's leadership, that he was the populist straight shooter, a clean break from the chaos of Corbyn's tenure. The reality, as the nation now sees, is that Starmer sanitized Labour's image on the surface while preserving an elitist, manipulative, and secretive political culture beneath. For all his legal credentials, he showed contempt for constitutional limits and the very democratic trust he claimed to uphold. The Supreme Court's verdict has exposed a secretive plot to undermine the referendum result and British sovereignty. Questions are already emerging about who else was involved. Leaked notes from Brussels meetings reveal the presence of senior shadow cabinet members who contributed to drafting the proposals. Some advocated for convergence with the EU, warning full divergence would be economically damaging. Others urged caution about electoral risks should the plan be leaked, advice that, as history shows, went unheeded. The fallout is now catastrophic. Labour's election prospects have suffered a sharp blow, particularly in Brexit-heavy constituencies. Polls show declining favourability among working-class voters and the over 50 demographic, the very group Starmer spent years courting. Tory MPs exploit the scandal mercilessly, branding Labour the party of betrayal. Reform UK has surged in popularity, positioning itself as the true defender of Brexit. At the centre of the storm, Starmer is exposed and weakened, his grand EU realignment plot laid bare for all to see. Within hours of the verdict, Labour's headquarters descended into chaos. What was meant to be a quiet campaign week has turned into a full-blown crisis. Panic spreads through MPs, staff, and regional leaders, all realizing the gravity of the scandal. Frantic emergency meetings were held. Crisis advisors were flown in. PR spin was drafted. But none of it could hide the truth that the Supreme Court had delivered, a damning legal condemnation of Starmer's secret scheme. Media headlines screamed, "Starmer caught EU conspiracy, judges slammed secret Brexit betrayal," and "Labour leader defied constitution." Voters who once gave Starmer the benefit of the doubt now turn against him with growing fury. The backlash isn't just external, it erupts from within Labour itself. Dozens of MPs from pro-Brexit constituencies are speaking out publicly. One senior Midlands MP declared on live radio, "This isn't what we signed up for. I supported Keir because he promised honesty and clarity, not secret EU deals behind our backs." A northern backbencher added, "If this is true, and the court says it is, then Starmer has no right to lead this party. He's put us all in political jeopardy." The real shock came from Labour's usually loyal front benches. Several shadow ministers tendered resignations, citing a breach of trust with voters. One rising star issued a statement, "Our democracy means nothing if leaders think they can bypass Parliament and secretly bind our country to foreign institutions. I cannot defend that." Resignations piled up. Starmer was no longer the unifying figure, he was the man who shattered the party in one devastating blow. Even pro-EU Labour figures found the scandal indefensible. Attempts to downplay the revelations as mere discussions or academic exercises fell flat. The public was not convinced. The court's judgment was clear, Starmer's actions were deliberate, calculated, and constitutionally unlawful. Efforts to spin the narrative only fueled suspicion that Labour's elite believed they could still manipulate public opinion like puppets on strings. Labour's membership base, which grew significantly under Starmer's early leadership, is fracturing. Local party branches are holding emergency meetings, some passing motions of no confidence in the leadership. Social media continues to amplify dissent, with longtime Labour supporters expressing feelings of betrayal and confusion. One activist from a traditionally Labour stronghold told journalists, "We voted for Starmer because we wanted honesty and a new direction." Adding fuel to the fire, leaked internal documents revealed that the alignment plan had been in development for over 2 years, involving extensive coordination between Starmer's office, senior civil servants, and EU representatives. The scale and secrecy of the operation suggested a deliberate attempt to circumvent democratic accountability. This revelation ignited fierce debates about the transparency and governance of Britain's political institutions. Legal experts weighed in on the wider implications of the Supreme Court's judgment. Professor Michael Hartwell, a constitutional law scholar, emphasized that the ruling sets a crucial precedent limiting executive power in the UK. This decision sends a clear message that no government can rewrite laws or commit the country to international obligations without parliamentary consent, he said. It reinforces the principle of parliamentary sovereignty, which is fundamental to our democracy. The ruling also raises important questions about the future of UK-EU relations. Critics of Starmer's approach argued that the attempt to realign UK regulations with the EU was a step towards rejoining the bloc by stealth, undermining the official government policy and the outcome of the referendum. Proponents of closer alignment, meanwhile, contended that regulatory cooperation is necessary for economic stability and that the secretive approach was a mistake in political communication rather than substance. The fallout is likely to reverberate well beyond British shores. Brussels officials expressed surprise at the court's ruling and the political storm it triggered, emphasizing that the EU remains open to working with the UK but respecting its sovereignty is paramount. Diplomatic sources suggested that the scandal could complicate ongoing negotiations on trade, security, and other key issues between the two entities. As the political earthquake shakes Westminster, the British public watches with keen interest. Voter confidence in Labour has plunged in recent polls, especially in regions that backed Leave in 2016 and had tentatively supported Starmer as a pragmatic alternative. Many now feel disillusioned, betrayed, and uncertain about where the party stands on the defining issue of Brexit. Political commentators are divided on whether Starmer can survive this crisis. Some argue that his legal background and methodical approach could enable him to weather the storm by demonstrating accountability and reform. Others believe the damage is irreversible, given the scale of the deception and the erosion of trust within his own ranks. Meanwhile, opposition parties are recalibrating their strategies. The Conservatives have seized on Labour's turmoil to reinforce their own narrative as defenders of Brexit, while the Liberal Democrats are positioning themselves as the principled alternative, appealing to disaffected Remain voters. The SNP continues to leverage the issue to bolster its case for Scottish independence, arguing that Brexit is a national disaster for Scotland. At the grassroots level, Labour members and supporters face a moment of reckoning. Many who believed in Starmer's leadership and vision now grapple with disillusionment. Constituency groups are organising forums and debates to discuss the crisis, while activists are divided over how to respond. Some call for unity and reform, urging members to remain loyal and push for change from within. Others advocate for a clean break, arguing that new leadership is essential to restore trust. Amid the chaos, one thing remains clear: the Supreme Court's ruling has not only dismantled a secret EU scheme but exposed deep fissures in the British political system. The episode has ignited urgent debates about transparency, sovereignty, and the relationship between government and parliament. It has also highlighted the challenges of navigating post-Brexit Britain, where the balance between cooperation and independence remains a contentious and deeply divisive issue. As Labour struggles to regroup and redefine its future, the broader question looms: what kind of Britain does the public want moving forward? The answer may well shape the next chapter of UK politics, as voters demand clarity, honesty, and respect for the democratic process above all else. For now, Keir Starmer faces the daunting task of rebuilding trust, not just with his party, but with a nation that feels betrayed. His next steps will determine whether he can salvage his leadership or become another casualty of one of the most tumultuous political crises in recent British history. Behind the closed doors of Westminster, the fallout from the Supreme Court ruling is not just a political headache, it is a seismic shock reshaping the landscape of British politics. Sources close to Keir Starmer reveal a leadership team in disarray. Senior aides, once confident in their strategy to quietly align the UK's regulations with the EU, are scrambling to contain the damage. Meetings have been described as frantic, with advisers debating how much to disclose and when. Amid the chaos, one thing remains clear: the Supreme Court's ruling has not only dismantled a secret EU scheme but exposed deep fissures in the British political system. The episode has ignited urgent debates about transparency, sovereignty, and the relationship between government and parliament. It has also highlighted the challenges of navigating post-Brexit Britain,